do we think, generally speaking, or what do you guys think about the protests that have been going on?
I'm all for it.
You're all.
I'm all for it. Okay. All for it.
And why is that?
I mean, I think that it's important to raise awareness about things going on around the world, period, especially for people that can't exactly just go and protest themselves. We need to, in order to, I guess, make change, there needs to be awareness. There needs to be people that know about the change that needs to be made, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think protesting is a very non-violent way to do that.
So how, because I think the non-violent part is like the really important part. So it's like a lot of these protests and everything that you've heard the trope about like mostly peaceful protest, right? And everything. And then it's like, I think we need to dissect that because I think there is the majority of people who show up to a protest who are wanting to see a change, who aren't meaning to be violent. But then you get 1% of people that come there and are looking for, let's start an armed revolution. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Start looting and stuff.
Right.
I feel like that's like most of the, because there's protests happening like everywhere right now.
Yeah.
But the ones that are really getting broadcast are the ones where it goes awry, where there's riots, where there's looting, where bad things are happening. But all of the good protests aren't just as seen, aren't as like visible.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And it makes it seem like all the protests are just violent.
Well, there's something inherent to that, I think. It's that like negative attention is more grasping, if anything like that. So like if something's going on negative, if everything's going fine, like if everything's just happening the way that it should happen, then that doesn't get any traction. What gets traction is the, oh my God, can you believe like what's going on type thing and everything. Like again with the like Israel, like Palestine protests and everything, it's like if you get one person who shows up to one of these protests and, you know, has anything with death to Israel or something like that, death to the Jews, anything, like you just get that one person and then the cameras focus in on that one person and that's what the
But then all of a sudden, all of the protests, even that, just that one protest was like that. All of a sudden, every single protest that's pro-Palestine, whatever, is all of a sudden highlighted as negative because of that one person at some other protest way before when.
Right.
Or it couldn't even be that. It could just be people like coming in with malaligned intentions of what the protest actually is. Because like there was the Seattle University had a protest where they like took over the library or something and the cops came in and arrested them and like 80% of the people that they arrested like weren't even students. Yeah, so it's like it just literally is not a majority of like students or whatever. It's just a bunch of people with like I don't know what their intentions are, but it's just not.
Right.
Are we allowed to talk about Charlotte?
We can talk about Charlotte.
Why wouldn't we?
Because on the news, so you guys heard about like the protests and encampments happening here, like on our campus.
Yeah, of course.
And they like raided it and like got them to disperse or whatever, and someone got arrested.
Wait, where was that?
Here.
Yeah, but where?
Oh, like at
Fred,
or at
the
like
Fretwell. So they were in the original spot that was outside of the student union. You know where that was, right?
That was like right outside.
It was like across the street from the student.
Yeah, I saw that.
So they moved. There's like a statue over here. I think it's called like the Self-Made Man or something like that. They moved over there for like a couple of days. And after they were there for a couple of days.
Wait, tents and everything?
Tents and everything. Yeah,
they had to move because the sprinklers were on. They put the sprinklers on all day.
Yeah.
The entire day just to get them out. And it was muddy. The grass was looking gray. Like, I don't know. Like, it was literally just to get them out.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. It seemed like a covert way just to kind of kick them off. You know, say what you will about it. But but then they moved over to another portion of the campus and they were camped out there for a couple days. And I think it was like in the morning, like this was a couple days ago.
Like 6 or 7.
Yeah, I think it was like 6:20 in the morning. Cops come by and basically just like a whole mob of cops come by and they just start taking down the tents.
Yeah.
Start taking
with like
out.
very little warning.
Yeah, I don't think
if any at all.
I don't think it was much of a warning at all. And I know one person got detained.
Yeah, he got arrested. They posted bail. It was $1,000, and he was out the next day.
Oh, he's out the next day.
But in the news. So he was a student,
Right.
and in the news like local news, they were saying that it was just some person who wasn't a student. They
But he-
couldn't even get the facts right.
But he was a student.
He was a
for
student.
sure.
He was a student.
For sure.
Wow.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I feel like it's like, even did you see Tom Cotton, a senator of I don't remember. He was a senator of some state, and he spoke out about the protest, and he said some very, I feel like, triggering things. He called the entire people protesting, well, first of all, he referred to them as little Gazas.
Little Gaza. That's crazy.
Incest pool, imbeciles.
Wait, in Gaza?
No.
This is a U.S. senator.
No, I know, but he's
He's
talking about Gaza
He's talking about the protests happening.
No, he's talking about the protests that are happening here.
Yeah,
that are about Gaza.
and he's pretty
That
much
are about Gaza.
he's pretty much
calling
just
them little Gaza.
damning all of them.
Wait, he's calling them little Gazans?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Bro.
And he had like this whole. I thought it was an SNL thing. I didn't realize. I didn't realize
He
that
thought it
this
was
was
To be
like a
fair,
cult. It was a
to be
cult
fair,
open to
I mean,
SNL.
he does look like a freaking SNL actor, okay? He does look kind of like an SNL actor, okay?
Yeah, that's it.
He-
Oh, he was the same guy that was asking the TikTok guy, You're from China. You're from China. You're part of the Chinese Communist Party." And he's like, "I'm from Singapore. I'm from Singapore." He's over and over again, but you have ties to China. Did you serve in the military for China?
Yep.
I'm from Singapore.
That's wild. Yeah.
I mean, it's just crazy. Like, I feel like politicians, it's definitely in their interest on both sides to be one side or the other, like never in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, for some reason, because there's always like, the other thing too is that, like, on a voting base, the people on the extremes vote more than the people in the middle. And so if you are trying to express the views of the extremes, you'll get a higher percentage of the vote, because all of those extreme thinking people, you get a higher percentage of them that vote versus the people that are in the middle. And so it's like the news in combination with the politicians that like create all this division that is just like so bad. Like, even for all these protests,
Yeah.
like, it puts it in such a negative light when it's like, if you went up and asked like 5 different people at the protests, they'd probably all be there for different reasons. Like, one person would probably be like, "Yeah, I have family in Gaza." Maybe another person's like, "I'm here to support my friend who has family in Gaza." Or there's another person that's just like, "I'm anti like whatever, like colonialism of Israel. I'm like whatever. I'm just anti-Israel in general." Like, there's going to be so many different opinions.
Yeah.
But it's like when you bunch it all together, that is, I think, the real issue. Like,
Especially with Tom Cotton pretty much describing all the protests all
Yeah,
over
exactly.
the country as pro-Hamas.
yeah, like, bro.
That's literally what he said.
yeah.
So I want to speak on this because I actually spoke to some of the protesters.
Yeah,
I went up and actually talked to a lot of them and everything. I was trying to dig some of that information out, like what is like your goal and everything. Like, what is the of course the biggest thing that they're all unanimously agreed on, like it. As far as the specifics, they might not all agree on like the specifics of everything, but one unanimous goal that they had was divestment. Like, that was the big thing that was common. Divestment from the universities from Israel. Like, any funding that goes to Israel that comes from a university, that has to stop. And the entire justification behind that is that they're actively committing a genocide, at least in their eyes and everything. You can talk about what constitutes a genocide and everything, but that's of course through their eyes and everything. But I spoke to a lot of them and everything. I was like, what would be your ideal solution? Like if we had like, if we can get an ideal solution there, like what ideally would you like to have happen? And a lot of them were saying like one state. They don't like the state of Israel, because they don't feel like it is, and in my eyes, from what I was hearing from, like, it's not like a true democratic state.
Mm-hmm.
That is what they're saying. And they're saying that they want a state that adequately represents everyone that lives there. They feel like
a 2-state solution.
Well, no, they're saying one state.
Yeah,
Well,
I feel like a lot of people are saying one state.
a lot of the people at the protests are, and I don't want to blanket everybody, because this is obviously what we're trying not to do. Right?
Yeah.
We're not trying to blanket.
Right.
But a consistent theme from talking to multiple people was like one state, but the state is not Israel. But the thing is, and I asked them, it's like, okay, but everybody should live there in peace, right? Like it shouldn't be one side gets wiped out, one side, shouldn't. They're like absolutely, like Jews should be able to live there, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, whatever, what have you, and everything. So that's where I don't like it when it gets spun as anti-Jew, because if you actually go into like any of these protests, right? If you talk to the majority of the people, and I've seen other interviews of people that went into the protest, there's not really, I haven't heard anything about anybody saying, death to the Jews, death to Israel and everything. I mean, a lot of
people are
them
so quick to say that too.
Right.
As soon as they hear you're on the other side, you must just absolutely hate the other side,
Right.
and you want them all to like whatever. But in actuality, that's not even the case.
it's like, it's very reactionary. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think, because they're coming from the state of, or the perspective of they're, anti-Zionism.
Yeah.
They don't, and I think that's something that a lot of people get conflated, is Zionism versus should Jews be able to live in an area. I don't think that people that are anti-Zionism, at least most of the people, now of course you have like Hamas, who like is, more violent and everything, and how they deal with things. And I'm sure not everybody in Hamas agrees, but it's like, if you look at people who are against Zionism, I don't think that equates to being against Jews. It's not, Jews shouldn't be safe.
I mean, I think it's a Venn diagram. I need like
What
like a Venn diagram of like people who are anti-Zionist
Right.
and people who are anti-Semitic, and then there's going to be like some convergence where like those are the most extreme people in the middle.
That's fair. Yeah. There's definitely people. Here's what I don't want to say. I don't want to say that there's no people who are anti-Zionist and anti-Jew, if that makes any sense. There are definitely people who are anti-Zionist that hate Jewish people, and that is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That is a clear moral wrong and everything.
Just because they're Jewish.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because they're and I don't want to take away from that side, because there are legitimately anti-Semitic people out there and everything, but you have to realize that I think there is a difference between saying, state for Jewish people versus people that are Jewish should be able to live in a state and be secure. I think there is a difference.
I feel like also not only that, but okay, like I remember in school, the main thing like that we really, really learned about was the Holocaust. Like that was huge.
Yeah,
like there were many other genocides in the world. There's nothing wrong with learning about the Holocaust, but that was the focus of genocide and war of whatever. But I feel like that also fostered an environment of being so not scared of like that type of thing, but everyone is very much inclusive of Jewish people. It's very like we are not taught to do that, but it's like, wow, that was really bad, and we're all kind of like, you know what I mean? Like we learned about that one the most, and as opposed to all of the many genocides that have happened all over across time.
Yeah, I think the reason why it's been the primary genocide that we study in history is because when the Holocaust happened, we didn't even have, I'm pretty sure the word for genocide didn't even exist until the Holocaust happened. And then we retroactively looked at it throughout time.
Yeah.
We've been like, okay, there's been a bunch of racially motivated, like all of this different kind of stuff that we then called genocide. But that was like in post from when the Holocaust happened. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong.
Well, another reason I think we focus on the Holocaust a lot is because it's directly tied with American history, in that it was tied with World War II, which that was a war that really shaped America as like a true superpower. Like it was pretty much just us and the USSR after that.
Yeah.
Right.
So that war solidified us as a superpower. So it was
Like
very
a U.S. centered type of
correct.
view
Yeah.
on history.
Correct. So I think the reason the Holocaust is so I think the reason the Holocaust is like integral to our learning is because it is intertwined with World War II, which is something that shaped America. Like when you take like the Armenian genocide.
Exactly.
For instance,
Yeah.
that was a huge genocide.
That was
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying is that like that was like I think like 1 million Armenians. I mean,
But the Ottoman
I don't know history like that.
right. So like I think you can fact check this too.
Yeah.
Like I think roughly like 1 million people or 1 million Armenians were killed during the Armenian genocide. The reason we don't learn about it in America is because it didn't have anything to do with us.
Yeah.
It had to do with pretty much the Ottoman Empire. This was before we became like we were a power at the time, but not this.
The Ottoman Empire during World War I.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was during World War One. I think you can look up the body count. I think it was like close to 1 million.
It says around 1 million Armenian.
It was implemented primarily through the mass murder of around 1 million Armenians during death marches.
So yeah, an estimated 800,000 to 100. Yeah.
Right.
1.2 million.
So, but it's funny because I mean that's massive, but we don't really get taught it. We don't talk about it. We don't get taught about it because it's not really integral to like U.S. history.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
I'm pretty sure that they're. I forget what the modern conflict is today because this war, like Armenian stuff like that, is happening again today. Like there's an Armenian genocide like war today that people are talking about. They're actually like not talking about. But
I feel like there's been frequent since World War II. There's been other like genocides that have happened that just haven't been broadcasted the way that other ones have been.
Well, they get broadcasted. But
Armenian Azerbaijan clashes, so it's the same conflict. It's just like recent, and this is as recent as 2022. Like where this is still happening. It's happening in the same area. Because there's this Armenia is over here, and what Azerbaijan is doing is there's a higher concentration of Armenians also within Azerbaijan, right here, and so what their Azerbaijan government is doing is they're literally trying to exclude all of these people and kick them into Armenia, and they don't care how. So that means like doing all of the above.
And I think this is another thing that we have to like that anybody when you talk about Israel, Palestine, or whatever, is like you have to understand that area of the world, like the Middle East in general, so many different groups have moved into so many different places, so many different wars and conquests have taken. It's almost like it's sad because it's like people get so tribal, but it's always been tribal. It's always in that area of the world because even if just where you look at it geographically like situated, it's in the middle of everything. Yeah. It's in the middle of all these different cultures. So people go, this is my land. And then a couple people move in from over here and go, no, this is my land and everything. And it's just anybody that's laying a huge claim to it. It's like, well, like about like 12 other groups have a claim to that same land. So I don't know.
It's all just very complicated.
That's what I'm saying.
Dude, that's crazy.
What are you looking at?
These are all the different conflicts that are happening in the world right now. They're like violent clashes.
Well, and it ironically.
So this is probably cartels and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, criminal violence in Mexico, instability in the Northern Triangle because of the Darien Gap, and that's probably like people immigrating from Panama up to Mexico. This is Haiti. Yep. Venezuelan. I didn't know about that. And then there's like millions, it seems, in Africa. There's so many different conflicts in Africa. Apparently Israel and Palestine is in...
No, Israel and Palestine's right there.
Oh, over here.
Yeah.
I'm just stupid.
I'm smart.
So conflict in Syria, Lebanon, and then Israel, Palestine. And then this one... Okay, so that's confrontation in Iran. Yeah, so there's so many. There's like so many conflicts in the world right now.
Well, again, that's what I kind of bring up is that if you look where the majority of them are situated, the majority of them are situated in like, North Africa and the Middle East.
I mean, it's the very concentrated Muslim parts of the world. Yeah. Like that's the correlation.
Do you think that's the correlation?
I do think it's the correlation.
Really?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, it's the majority of Muslim populations. Like this is where all of those three religions came from.
Right.
So that's where a bunch of those conflicts come from. And so I say Muslim, I'm not trying to single out Muslim. I'm saying that like Africa is a majority of Muslim right now. And so, but there's also different sects of like Christianity and Judaism, and all of those clash with each other and to some extent. And that's why it's all right here.
Here's what
your point.
I guess with the Islam thing, it's like correlational versus cause.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like it's
correlated.
It's correlated.
Correlated.
Okay, it's not. Yeah, that's the point.
It's the cause is. I'm not saying the cause is Islam right now.
Yeah,
I'm not saying. I'm just saying
there is a correlation.
There's a correlation that this is like the majority Islam population right here.
For sure.
Kind of goes over into India a little bit, but like this whole oval right here.
Right.
So when there's just
Is
like a
Islam.
bunch of different religions just clashing.
Well, the difference with all of them is that they all teach fundamentally pretty much the same thing. They just disagree with one, who said it, and two, like what the prophets, what they said actually means. So the Jewish book, what is the Jewish book?
Well,
Torah?
Torah.
Talmud, yeah.
That's from
I think everything's
Moses,
called the Tanakh.
right? So the Torah is from Moses, the Quran is from Muhammad,
Mhm.
and then the difference between those is that the New Testament gospel that Christianity believes is that is a collection of different documents written by different people
Yeah.
about the same guy. That's the other difference. So it's like the reason why Christians don't like have so many different sects too is that there's like, I mean, every religion does, but like Christianity is splintered in so many different ways is because they're all written by different people and can
Right.
be interpreted in many different ways. Whereas like with Islam, you have pretty much two primary sects, which is like Shiites and Sunni
Yeah.
Muslims, and then you have like the Jewish community who only has like, I'm pretty sure there's Zionism and there's anti-Zionism in Judaism.
Yeah.
I think like
I think Zionism.
I could be
is-
totally ignorant in like what that
well,
classification
I was
is.
gonna say
Uh-huh.
Zionism was more like a political movement versus
Yeah.
like a religious thing.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
so
true.
Zion-
Yeah, true.
Zionism is primarily it's more of a political
But it is nationalistic though.
Yeah.
To its
Yeah.
heart.
Yeah, of course.
That's,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Well, I don't think. Here's the thing. I really don't think the majority of the conflicts that are going on in the Middle East are religious based. I think a lot of it's tribal, political based. It's just like different. Because I
Do you
think.
think it's based on religion though? Like it could be tribal religion, but based on
Well, because
religion?
here's the thing. You got to look at it like this, right? Like in Pakistan and Afghanistan and everything, and like in Iraq and everything. There's not much disagreement on religion right there. Like it's majority Islamic populations. The only one you can really point to on this entire map that you can say is a bit of a religious conflict is Israel Palestine. But even that's not completely just off of religion. That has to
Yeah.
do with like historical like political conflict and everything.
I do think in Africa though, what you're saying is true. I think a lot of that is tribalistic like conflict.
Yeah,
For sure.
for sure. Yeah, in Africa. Well, I'm saying it's all and this is where the the whole colonialist like conversation comes in
Yeah.
because you got to look at like the most of the Middle East or a good portion of the Middle East, not all of the Middle East. A good portion of it is remnants of the Ottoman Empire. Right?
Yeah.
And after the Ottoman Empire fell apart, then it's like we've got basically the winners of World War One coming in. World War One coming in and just drawing the lines of where these new states.
Well, that was part of the Peace Act, right? It was because that was where colonialism was the biggest, was around the time of World War One, and so they're part of the peace. What like the treaty, the ceasefire, was that like all of Germany's colonies got reduced, and then all of the other countries. It's like what we did to Germany in World War II, but like in World War One, we just did it to their colonies and not Germany itself.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so that's where I think a lot of it came in because I know like France took over like a huge part of Africa and they still like are colonized in Africa right now. Like there's a huge military population that is French that is in like
French
the-
Foreign Legion.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is in Africa.
Yeah.
And I know for a big fact, like a lot of the Middle East was British. That was even before World War One, like India and everything like that. And then, there was remnants everywhere else. But yeah, no, you're definitely, that's definitely right.
Yeah, and that's a big part of this that I don't like is when it gets conflated as religious conflicts because you have to understand it's not. I think that's people that are trying to oversimplify like
Mhm.
basic, and to me it's like
Yeah.
it's a lack of understanding.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pretend like I have a perfect understanding of what's going on, but it's
Yes.
not. It's not just one book versus another.
Yeah.
book. It's a lot of.
Yeah.
It's a lot of like this we're fighting over territory.
Right.
A lot of
Uh-huh.
it is fighting over territory that was not given clearly defined areas and borders and everything, because it wasn't decided by the people that lived there.
Mhm.
It was decided by the people that won a war against the empire that used to control
Yeah.
at least a lot of that area.
Mhm.
Not all of it, but a lot of it.
I think the biggest thing was when the Ottoman Empire did get shattered, and then like Britain took over, like just to bring it back to Israel Palestine again, like Britain controlled Palestine as a whole.
Right.
And then when they gave it back to like this reduced section of it they gave and called Israel after World War II, like shortly after World War II. And then where Israel is right now is a result of all of the Arab states that surrounded Israel attacked them on all fronts, and then Israel pushed back and claimed all the territory, even in all the way into Egypt. Like,
oh, really?
oh yeah, Israel was like
the Sinai Peninsula.
massive before they gave all their territory back, and then they agreed with all the Arab states around them, and then that's what the modern Israel state is right now.
Yeah.
And the biggest conflict with the Gaza stuff is that, like, Palestine itself, and this is a huge argument too, that like most of the people that are like anti-Palestinian protests and all this stuff is like there's a large percentage of people and scholars and religious people that don't even think that Palestine itself is a legitimate state. You know.
Okay. And I see your face. The reason he's
no, it's true. It's true.
well, no, the reason he's saying is because it's never an official state. Is that the only time it was like officially called Palestine, even in the modern era, like that was an officially sort of recognized state. It was the British Mandate of Palestine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it was a colonial entity, basically owned by the British and everything.
And where that came from was when the Romans had Palestine, they didn't like the Jews who lived in Palestine. So the now modern Palestinian era. So when the Romans had it colonized, they called it Palestine as I think it was like a slur term.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah, that's why they called it Palestinian.
Yeah, look that up. I want to see that.
Yeah. Where's the Carfax?
Rome, I guess, title. I don't know.
Palestinian.
It's so hard.
Syria. No, it's Syria, Palestine. Yeah, right there. Right there.
Right.
No, right there. Wiki.
Roman cults.
Name. Go up to name. Wow. Right there.
Was given, former province of Judea in the early 2nd century AD.
The renaming is often presented as an act of putative disassociation in the aftermath of the 132 to 135 Bar Kokhba revolt, identifying Emperor Hadrian as the one responsible for the measure, though no direct evidence suggests exactly when the name change was implemented or by whom, and the renaming may even have taken place at an earlier date. Okay, so you're saying it's basically a name given to them post-Judea.
Yeah, it was when the Romans occupied Judea, this is 2nd century.
Right.
So this is still in the wake of Christianity, expanding and growing.
The timeline of the name of Palestine.
So I need to get a few sources on this other than Wikipedia. But
I don't trust Wikipedia.
Yeah. Wikipedia has been...
Is borrowed from the Latin Palestine.
Yeah, because the Romans didn't like the Jews. Everybody knows that the Romans didn't like the Jews when they colonized. So they tried... but they hated the Jews, okay? So, and they hated a lot of people. Yeah, for sure. But when they renamed Judea to Syria, Palestine, that was to take away the Jewish identity. They did not they wanted to completely remove that. And so I'm pretty sure whatever Palestine means, there was a different word that is now translated to Palestine.
It's all right here. So essentially, the English term Palestine itself is borrowed from Latin Palestina, which is in turn borrowed from ancient Greek Palestine or whatever, used by Herodotus in the 5th century BC per Martin Noth. While the term in Greek
rival adversary.
It's similar to what the name Israel comes from. It's because Israel is wrestles with God.
Well, we who wrestle with God.
Yeah, we would
that's-
wrestle with
yeah.
God and everything, and so I guess Palestine was like the same thing, just different, I guess.
Well, Palestine was to label them as like literally just call them like outright as like enemy, like rival, adversary, like wrestler in the sense that like we are wrestling with you in an like
Right.
not a friendly way.
Yeah.
Right?
It feels like the conflict has just been set up from the beginning.
Oh yeah. Oh definitely.
Well, and I think that's what I'm trying to get at too, is that so many, because I mean, you look at this area that's being controlled, right? It was controlled by Alexander the Great, the Roman Empire, the Jews, like multiple emirates and everything,
Mhm.
multiple Islamic emirates, the Ottoman Empire. Like this area has always been constantly morphing and changing,
Mhm.
and under control of different people and cultures and everything. And that's where I'm saying, like, for any one person, whether it's a Palestinian or an Israeli Jew or anybody, to be like, this is mine,
Yeah.
is like
Yeah.
Yeah.
40 other people have a claim to this land
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and have ancestors that have lived there for hundreds if not thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, at what point do we say, okay, this is ours?
Yeah.
This is
I don't-
Yeah.
Is there? Do you guys think we're ever going to get to a point where we just like don't have territory? Like we just don't care about territory
No.
itself?
I don't think it's ever gonna happen.
We don't think it's ever going to happen.
I think it's
Like I have the opinion where it's like we're in 2024 and like even over here, like we're still arguing about borders and like
Yeah.
all of this different stuff.
I feel
It's
like it's always gonna be relevant. I feel like.
so actually, can I give you a counterpoint on that? So
Yeah.
I would say I don't think we're as far along in history as we think we are.
Mhm.
If you think about how many, if you're taking the evolutionary perspective, how many thousands, like hundreds of thousands, millions of years we've been around, right?
Yeah.
We only started keeping track of shit for the last 3,000 years,
Yeah.
right? 4,000. Like we didn't start writing stuff down until the last couple thousand years. We
Yeah.
didn't even decide to start numbering the years until 2024 years ago,
Right.
right? So I don't think we're as far along as we think. We think we're very far along because we've got like a lot of cool technology.
Innovations and yeah.
Right, but I think like as far as human understanding and human development, I think the more we realize that we are more alike than different, I think that's when you see things like borders and territories and territorial disputes start to evaporate, right?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, like think about this room. I'll bring an elephant in this room. Even 60, 70 years ago, this was not possible. Two white dudes and a
Yeah.
black woman in the same room, in the same college, right?
Yeah.
In the same university and everything. Just having conversations, everything, partnering up together.
Yeah.
That was not a thing, really. Especially in the South. We're in the South.
Yeah.
Even 70, 80 years ago. And you look in 70, 80 years' time and everything. We're still dealing with stuff. We're still dealing with after effects of it, right?
Mhm.
But we're actually at a point where we're starting to work together, right? We're
Right.
starting to do things together.
But even with that, I feel like even however much we'll like be like, oh, we're the same. Now we're talking about race or whatever.
Yeah.
And everyone views us as the same, but everyone's always going to pick out differences. Everyone wants to be unique, if that makes sense. I feel like people want that uniqueness. People want to be different. People want to be better. Want to be on a different power level. I feel like everyone kind of and will always kind of have that mentality. I don't know.
Well, it's like the status.
It's not necessarily like race always. It could be gender. It could be politics. It could be living situation,
Literally
economics.
just,
Like literally anything that will separate you from another person,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right.
I think it's a part of like us as humans. I have this like theory where we just are so like humans are so good at pattern recognition that if there's ever something that goes wrong in an individual's life, it is so much easier to like identify a pattern and relate it to somebody else,
Mhm.
or like that pattern of people. So like I'm pretty like confident that that's what it is. It's just like a default mode where it's like we talk about those people over there because it's like that's the pattern that we recognize, and then we create like these structures of races. Like
Mhm.
races as it stands,
It's a social construct.
it's pretty much a social construct. Like it was like going back to the Roman Empire, like whatever that meme is, how many times a day do you think about the Roman Empire? But
There's
like,
another one.
but like for real, but like for real, it's like when you think about it, like they labeled when they got south enough to Africa and they saw people with highly melanized skin, they called them black people, and they thought that it was like because it wasn't them, they were somehow inferior, and that's literally where all of that arose from. And so that they then Romans had all different kinds of slaves, but then it was like the Romans got vastly technologically more advanced than African tribes, and then that's where it started. And then that's just where it's been for thousands of years. And we still have that today. Like we still have some communities who are just like so ignorant of the fact that like this is science.
Right.
Like we live in areas where it's like, okay, the sun isn't always out all the time. Like we have cloudy days. In Africa, the sun is out, bro. Like
We don't
the
even
whole
consider
time.
that. So in Africa, it's like they don't have a season.
Pretty
It's
No,
just
like,
hot.
it's like rainy season, dry season.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's not
yeah.
temperature. It's
Yeah.
not like the amount that the sun's out. Because if you're so situated in the middle, the middle of the earth, right near
Right.
the equator, it's like the sun's generally in pretty much in the same place the whole time.
Yeah.
It's like being in Alaska. Like it's the equivalent. Like in the summer, like the Alaskan sun never sets,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's like it's cloudy and you have more atmosphere to go through.
Right.
Like that's the other thing too. Is like it is a natural protection mechanism of your body saying, hey, we don't want these UV rays from the sun hitting us. So in the equator, the reason why everybody at the equator is more colored is because the equator is weaker because the majority of the sun's rays hit the equator. And so the magnetic field that protects against the UV rays is weaker in the middle. So there's a larger proportion of people that have more natural protection against it.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's just like, but it's like, no, they're just inferior for something.
They suck.
Yeah, it's just
and
like,
then
come
even
on.
and then even within those communities, even colorism becomes to be like a prevalent thing because of I don't even know why. Because even like in like the African countries, even like in Vietnam and places in Asia or even India, it's just so relevant of colorism and how it's in like a darker color is just inferior when everyone's the same color,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
yeah.
Well, I mean, because
Well, it's
are you
like
saying
similar.
even like in like Nigeria, right?
Yeah, I'm from Nigeria.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, even like in Nigeria, are you saying that there's like differences in perceptions like amongst people of different shades?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Skin bleaching, huge.
Really?
Skin bleaching in India, huge. Skin bleaching in a lot of Asian countries, huge.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like and
Hey,
it's
no.
not even in Nigeria or even in these countries. It's in America too, and it's just within the communities.
Mhm.
Like everyone is so quick, especially in the Black community. There's a difference between like dark skin versus brown skin versus caramel skin versus light skin. Like everyone's trying so hard to not be dark skinned or
Really?
black skinned or whatever they're calling it now. But it's just like it's just like an identity that people just don't seem to want to have, if that makes sense.
I'm well aware of the conflict between the dark skins and light skins.
Yeah, but there's like but now there's caramel skin, brown skin,
Oh, dude, it's
and
getting
all
worse.
this and that.
So, do you think that's a like factor? Like, because there's also the way that we have it in America right now too is like the one drop policy or whatever. It could be going by a different name, but it's like the fact, like even with Native Americans, like if you're 1/16 Native American, you're Native American. But if you're fully Native American, you're like on the same spectrum. But it's like, but if you're 1/16, the odds that you look like fully Native American is probably pretty low.
Yeah.
Like the actual looks, and so it's like, is that like similar, like with the
No, in a sense, I don't really know like how to explain it, but like they just look at you different. If that makes like light or like they like the colors of different people just look at each other
so-
differently. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
it's just like if you're lighter, you're more beautiful. It's just like the Western or like Eurocentric type of beauty. If that makes sense, it's like. I mean, I don't know. That's just how it is. It's
That's
like if you're lighter skin, you're still black, but you're prettier than someone else who's darker skin.
Wow.
Like that's how they.
I'm not
That's
going to
how
pretend
it
like I don't
is.
know what you're talking about. That's the thing. I'm not going to pretend because I've heard that and everything.
Yeah,
Like,
or even like
especially-
hair.
Yeah.
Like the.
I always
hair
thought, for
thing.
some reason, I always thought it was the inverse.
Okay, honestly, for white people, yes.
What do you mean?
Okay, like
Okay.
tanning and everything,
Right.
like white people always
Yeah, that's
like
what
tanning and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a limit. You can't get too dark now. That's like I remember going throughout
Really?
school. I remember going throughout school and they're like, "Oh, I need to get a tan," but like not like you.
Well, something that looks weird to me is like if a blonde girl is very tan because it doesn't look
But
natural.
there's always a limit,
Like, it's
regardless
like
of natural or
orange,
not.
right?
I mean,
Right, yeah.
orange, even the natural tans aren't really
Yeah.
that natural.
Yeah.
But there's always a limit. There's too dark,
Right.
if that makes sense. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a. I don't know how it is in like the white community, but.
I like for some reason like I always thought like this could just be total ignorance on my part, but I thought if it was like the darker your skin is, the better it is because you relate more with like the African American community. Whereas if you're more white, then it's like more.
Oh well,
Like-
I didn't really see it like that, but I just know all the girls they're always trying to get their tan on.
Mm.
People make fun of people who are too like pasty or
Yeah.
too white
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Or,
I guess it's on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, when I worked
Really?
at Topgolf in the kitchen, like all of the African American people that worked, like all of my friends that were in that kitchen, they would come in the mornings and say like, "Hey, I look ashy today," like not dark. So that's where I got that
Well,
from.
ash
It's like
is
they,
different.
Yeah.
Ash is different.
I'm totally ignorant. Like
Ashy
so I have no idea.
is like when you have like dry skin,
Mhm.
it's like
Like
that's
I see.
like it. That's
Okay.
ash. Like that's ash.
Interesting.
So it's
Dang.
that's why I asked for some lotion.
Your I grew up in Colorado is showing.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely. 100%, dude. 100%.
No, but
That is, I will say, it is kind of interesting how it's because I totally noticed it when I came over here from Colorado. It's like the amount of diversity is like went up, I swear to God, by like 500%. Because it would be like I swear to God, like there was like maybe 10, like even just darker skinned people. They could be black, they could be
just
Hispanic.
not
There's not white. Like it would just be like maybe 10 that I knew. And then you come over here, it's almost like it's very balanced.
Mhm.
And it's like it was so interesting to me. I was like, why does that happen?
white.
I feel like it's definitely the area that we're in, Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's
Do you think
definitely
it's just
we're in
like-
Charlotte.
Do you think it's just because like we just like relatively recently, like 150 years ago, abolished slavery, and like a majority of the African American population was already in the South.
Yeah.
So they just
That's
stayed in the
100%.
South.
Yeah,
They
That's
haven't
100%.
migrated
Yeah.
outwards in a sense.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is. 'cause
And there's
that's-
definitely more
that's-
diversity and innovation in like cities, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. So
Mhm.
like in
Yeah, true.
cities, there's just gonna be more diversity.
But like even in California though, like they're not particularly diverse either.
oh,
Well,
Really?
Southern California definitely.
Southern
Southern California.
Like
Yeah, that's
San
closer to
Diego.
America. That's like closer to Mexico and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I'm talking about like deep like San Francisco, like maybe Los Angeles is a little different because that's like a pretty big melting pot. But like
Right.
in terms of like diversity, there's a lot of Asians and there's a lot of white people, but there's like the other minorities are not there
Yeah.
pretty much.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, I mean, again, you have to look where you're talking about because, like,
Yeah.
Bay Area,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
if you look
Yeah.
at Oakland, like, you're gonna
Yeah,
get a
I
lot
don't really
different.
know.
Sure.
I have a lot of
numbers than-
family in
That's
California,
interesting.
actually.
Yeah.
Like
What-
San
what-
Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
Oakland. Is it Oakland?
Oakland's like a suburb. of
Well, no,
San Francisco.
Oakland,
I don't
Oakland's got like more of a predominantly black.
I don't know. San Francisco. That's
That's
all
all
I
I know.
know.
That's all I
Oakland is
know.
outside of San Francisco, it's a separate city, outside of San Francisco, like in that Bay Area.
Uh-huh.
And everything more predominant. I don't want to say predominantly African American because I don't know like the specific numbers, but that's known as like a blacker city.
I will
Yeah.
say now though that now that I think about it, like I did grow up in like suburbia, Colorado, and like I never really traveled to Denver that often. So, but maybe that's what it is. Like maybe it's just not diverse in the suburbs, and then it is like the more like inward towards an urban city that you
Yeah.
go. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's like urban areas? Like, because
outside of the urban areas aren't safe, dude.
Yeah, for real. We don't know where we are.
But the other thing too is like that's what like a majority of like even bringing it back to like the original topic is like that's where a lot of protest happens too, is like in a majority like urban areas. Like is where all of this stuff is. So like what is it about urban areas that
Could it be the
attracts-
distribution of wealth? If that makes sense.
like urban areas it's like more obvious that the wealth inequality is there, or
I feel like suburban areas are just more middle class
Mhm.
type of
yeah,
like economic statures and
Definitely.
stuff. And then in the cities, it can be a ranging of wealth.
yeah, all the
but-
way from ultra rich to like
Yeah,
dirt
I
but-
feel like
poverty.
here's the thing: if you really look at America, right? Like if you look at America, it's like cities and suburbs are usually pretty diverse. Then that
Suburbs, though.
suburbs-ish. Well, depending on the suburb, right?
Yeah.
The farther you get away from the city, obviously, it becomes an ocean of white people.
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, at the end of the day, like whites constitute the majority of the American population and everything. So it's like you see, like, and I don't know, maybe that's a. I mean, there's a number of factors, like economic factors, just historical stuff and everything. But it's like people that are more like alike, like from a certain kind of group, kind of what we're talking about, tend to stick around each other.
Mhm.
So if it's like an ocean of white people out there, then in these urban centers, it's like more people migrate there, obviously because of job opportunities and everything. But then like once you're in a certain area, you tend to stick around
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that are like you, if it like in that sense.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know, but like, why does that happen in urban areas, not just like a small town?
That's where the opportunity is. I mean that's what I would assume that would be. That's where all
Just like jobs and everything.
Yeah, I mean you go out
Source
in
of
the
jobs.
middle of like look at like Lincolnton, North Carolina. Not trying to shit on Lincolnton or everything, but it's like there's not going to be near the amount of like economic opportunity as like if you go to a Charlotte. There's so many different industries here. There's so many different kinds of businesses. So
Yeah.
much wealth that
True.
accumulates in these areas.
Yeah. And it can also be hard to even migrate out just because of like economic like issues, or not issues, but if you aren't making that much money and your whole family is from the city XYZ, it can be really hard to just be like, all right, let's pack our bags and
Yeah.
move.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
like, okay, like we're gonna stay here.
Yeah.
It's not even really an option.
Well, and I don't know. I think kind of like getting on track too, like with everything we've been talking about. Is kind of the fear of the other thing, which is like what we're getting at is that like we have this fear of the opposite group, like the out group type.
That's what I was saying earlier. Like, it's so much easier to identify a specific set of problems with a specific set of like people.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Like, this is what I was telling like Devin in one of our talks. I think it was like when we were talking about, I think it was affirmative action, and I was saying that like that your skin color is like one of the most obvious tells of like that you are a separate culture or ethnicity. And so that's like the one distinguishing factor that like is the most divisive, especially if like you have like this mindset where like that matters. Like in Europe, it gets more divisive because of like language or
Mhm.
different
Culture.
Yeah, but like language is the other one. Like
Yeah.
if you can
Yeah.
immediately not understand somebody, then they're obviously another different culture.
Yeah.
And then, it goes inwards, but I think it starts with visual. Like the
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing you can see, like even if you have somebody who's like disabled, like in a wheelchair, like that's like the one thing, or they have crutches or something, or they
Yeah.
have
Even the
well-
name alone, disabled.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Disabled.
But it's like even if they have like a slight limp or they like walk with like it's just
Right.
we're so visually attuned that we like distinguish whatever we can come up with as a problem like with that set of people.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just a weird. I don't know where that comes from.
Well, I mean,
It's
thing-
weird.
I think we have to like get down to this too, because it's like whether you're looking like at Israelis or like the Palestinian protesters like on college campuses and everything. And this is why I wanted to make an effort to actually go and talk to some of them and everything.
Yeah.
Is when you just see them, like you see an angry mob. Like that's all you're seeing, but you're not getting to know people on an individual level and everything. But the problem is with most people is just they see that and they don't want to approach. They're afraid to approach.
Yeah.
But that fear is exactly what exacerbates the problem. It's what makes it worse, because it's like if you're not willing to even go over there and approach somebody because you're afraid of what they might say and everything. For me, it's like I go over there and I try to be patient with the person that I'm talking to, because even if I think it's the dumbest thing that you've like ever said, like coming out of your mouth, like I want to know, okay, how did you get there?
Yeah.
Like why is it? And I think a lot of times when people like rationally lay out why they came to this protest and everything, like if they can be given enough time to logically lay out, okay, this is why I think this is wrong because of this and everything, versus you just see them angry and you go, screw them, I'm not with them. And you have like an emotional reaction to it, then you never actually create any kind of bond that's actually going to get to anywhere where we can solve anything.
Especially with the media and people yapping about Tom Cotton just yapping about little Gazas and the incest pool, and just pretty much just slandering the entire thing, making it so hard for people to approach them and come up with their own conclusions on what's happening.
And the thing that pisses me off is the most opinionated people about it are the ones who are not actually going up and having conversations with them.
Yeah.
The most, this is what they're doing. It's like, dude, you watched like a 20-second clip on
Fox News.
Yeah, on Fox News, or even CNN or whatever.
That's
and you saw a 20-second clip of one person acting like an idiot, and then you just labeled the entire group as this one thing. But there's no attempt to get to know somebody on any kind of individual level.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Those are the most opinionated people, is the people that know the least.
I mean, I think people, like when it comes down to this, I think a lot of people would just rather take that and be lazy with what they know rather than spending like 4 to 5 hours like digging into like what is actually the reason why people are protesting or like whatever. Like we very briefly skim the surface of like the root cause of like the Palestine-Israel conflict by just saying that like, you know, colonialism and then like the fragments left behind and all this different stuff. And it's like, I think that it's like, it sounds rude, but I do think like I am guilty of it. Like sometimes where it's just like, it's so much easier to be lazy with it and just trust what the media says in that 20 seconds rather than like start on like a 4 to 5 hour like
and
research.
It can be hard to even doubt like the news, because I feel
true.
like the news is supposed to be that reliable source. And when you're going about school, it's like, oh, you have to look at like the news. Like the news is, it's not going to lie to you. It's the news, but it's just the biases, the perceptions. It just creates like a different, not different reality, but it's just a different perception that maybe you wouldn't have even looked at it that way. If
like,
that makes sense.
This is another thing too. Like the higher percentage of the voting population is older. I think they're like about like it's millennials and up. Like it's the highest percentage of the voters. But those are also the highest percentage of people that didn't grow up with the internet. And so they're not like, I don't know.
They're relying on the paper.
And I don't know if they're completely proficient enough in navigating the internet to even find all the relevant research that would matter anyway.
Yeah.
So that's another barrier to entry. Like of people like being informed, where like the news is quite literally your only option at that point.
Yeah.
Unless you want to go to a library and like look at the book on like Palestinian history, you know, like
and then
it's like 1,000 pages.
Even that it might even be biased if that
true,
because even history itself is low key biased.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. I just think that you know there's so many factors that go into it, but on the other side of it too, a lot of protesters are younger people. So it's like, yes, a majority of the people who vote are of the older population. But then again, like on the flip side, the majority of protesters who are protesting the policies who don't vote are the majority of people who are protesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know
That's
if
kind of tricky there.
Well, can I bring this up too? It's how like the majority of like communist thinkers happen to be younger people, and
Yeah.
the majority of people are like more pro-capitalism or a little bit older.
Mhm.
And there's one very basic reason for that is that the 19, 20-year-old communist doesn't have any money, and the person who's been working, like they're like 40, 50, 60 years old and everything, they've been working for decades, they've actually accumulated wealth. So they're like, hey, let's not change anything. Everything's-
I know we
Yeah.
were talking about this earlier, but like, explain to me again with the communism thing, because I just haven't seen it. I haven't been exposed to it.
Okay, so what I was getting at, and I think this is a big reason that a lot of people have emotional reactions to what's going on with the protest, is that there is, and you can dispute it if you want to, but I've literally seen it with my own eyes from talking to people. There are people with Marxist ideas in these protests, and there just happens to make up, that's not all of the percentage of these protests, but like some of it's people that have legitimate family in Palestine, right?
Mhm.
And then some of it's other people, and then there is legitimate Marxist elements to it. And my main issue with that is that fundamentally, if you're talking about like any kind of like communist revolution and everything, like communist type protests and everything, is that okay, what is your problem? You have an issue with America going around and being an oppressive, like dictatorial entity, like in the world, right? Like it's using violence, like it's using suppression and everything of other people. And then what are you replacing it with when you're advocating for any kind of communist Marxist government? You're advocating for another oppressive system that uses murder and torture as a tool to expand its power.
Mhm.
So at that point, it's like, what is the difference? And I can tell you what a lot of the difference is. I can actually tell you a little bit of what the difference is that the people that are advocating for communism are at the bottom of the hierarchy in a capitalist society. They want to be at the top.
Mhm.
So I'm sure you've seen this. It's like the Jordan Peterson trope where it's like, he's like, communists are not motivated by their love of the poor as much as their hatred of the rich. So like fundamentally, it's envious,
Right.
Yeah.
And the way it tries to sell itself is like, oh, we're for the people and everything. We're gonna like lift up the people, and then but you look at every single like legitimate communist, legitimate Marxist society that arises, what happens is actually it does accomplish its goal. It makes everybody equal. It makes everybody equally poor, equally destitute, equally starving, like equally liable to be like prisoners.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is, if you're going to advocate for a system to replace the American colonial capitalist system that is dominating the world and it's causing all this violence, don't replace it with another system that uses violence and oppression to accomplish its goals.
Right.
Get something better.
Have you been seeing what people have been saying about like the Met Gala and stuff like that?
No.
About how all of the rich celebrities are dressing up and playing dress up and having their ball or whatever, while all the wars and everything bad is going on in the like world,
Well,
and people are just hating on it.
Yeah.
Just hating on it. Period.
I just don't. Well, they also don't do themselves any favors by like broadcasting it and having like cameras and like everything like in there. It's like they're just trying to show off at that point. Whereas like if they had none of that and they just went, I'm sure nobody would like care because it wouldn't be visible.
Yeah, but I think that's the point though.
What do you mean?
It being visible is the point.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
You're saying that Met Gala in and of itself,
Like they want to show off.
Yeah,
like they just,
it's definitely
intentional.
they're showing off the designers, the celebrities, the famous people. Those are the famous people. They're at the top of the top, and they are playing dress up. And
Yeah.
it's cute.
I think another thing for like that too is like it's an interesting thing because it's like you always see it with the like this is what happened with the October Revolution in Russia, right?
Yeah, like 1918.
Yeah, when the what would become the Soviet Union, started with like people who absolutely hated like the rich and the ruling class at that time, and then the rich actually sympathized with the movement, right? Like the people who were ruling, whether it be like out of like just trying to defend themselves and not be like excluded or whatever from their status quo, but it's like the ruling class at that point were with the protesters. protesters, like at that point. And then the protesters came in and be like, okay, we see you. Now we're gonna go in, and then the protesters took over, and the ruling class who was with them was now completely abolished, just like at a turn of face, like about face direction. Like now we're gonna direct all of our anger towards you.
Yeah.
And then that ruled the Russian Empire for a while before.
USSR,
Yeah, and so like it seems to be like it's always. I think that's where envy always leads. Like there's never a point where envy stops. Like if you're going through it, like if what you say is true, like if you're at the bottom of the capitalist hierarchy, and that's why most people like support communism. If that's true, then it's like if they're envious for the top, what is the top when you get to the top?
Yeah.
Well,
I feel like it's just like there is no ceiling.
Yeah,
to be
exactly.
honest. It's just up and up and up and up and up.
yeah, and it's just I think that's where you're coming from with like it's oppressive because it is fundamentally an envious kind of way of thinking, and then that envy never stops, and so it could be like it just and then it cyclones down, and then anybody has the ability to be oppressed,
Right.
like is what you said.
Yeah. Well, the window for what is an oppressor gets wider and wider and wider.
Yes.
That's the whole thing.
But the oppressors are claiming that these people are the oppressors when they're the like it's just so weird.
So if you ever read the Gulag Archipelago, right? It's a book. It's right. Yeah. So it's actually it was written by a Russian. He was a former like lieutenant or something, some kind of higher ranking officer. He was a soldier too, but he was like he was an officer position in the USSR during World War II, and he got detained for I want to say almost a decade by the USSR. You know what he got detained for?
What?
Sending a letter that criticized Stalin. He literally this guy like served his country, like fought for his country, fought for the Soviet Union, and he literally got detained for just writing a letter that was critical that got opened up by like the Secret Service, like basically Russian Secret Service and everything. And he got detained for like 10 years, was like sent to exile for some years and everything. And he wrote a compilation. It's called the Gulag Archipelago. He wrote a compilation of stories from different people that were imprisoned in the gulags and everything, and just the different things that the Russian government did. But
What
that's
exactly is the Gulag?
the Gulag
Is
is
it
a
like-
Russian prison system.
Very harsh.
Is it like
prison
kind of the
system.
same thing as like the Call of Duty?
You're thinking of Call of Duty Gulag.
Like the
I mean,
Call of
yeah.
Duty
I
Gulag?
guess. You're not technically wrong, but so it's just the Russian prison system during the USSR.
And traditionally, they made Russian. The reason why they were particularly despised is because the conditions were so poor because they were in the northern part of Russia, which is incredibly cold.
Yeah.
And they never gave that's one of the biggest.
Well, I'm
things
pretty
that I
sure it was overall. It was over all of Russia, but they had several prisons. That
Well,
were
like the most
Siberia.
extreme ones,
Yeah,
were
most
like in
extreme.
Siberia,
Yeah.
Like there's a town in Russia that was a gulag, and the primary reason for this town was like to support because it was one of the biggest gulags, and so the entire reason for this town was for the guards and everything to support them. And now that the gulags are gone, like this town still exists in Siberia, but it's like just gone. Like there's just like
And so this is
no reason to live there.
right, and this is like all this is circling. No, you're fine. It's this is all circling back to my point. Is this is all related to something called the I think you're familiar with it, the Matthew principle.
Mhm.
So it's a scripture in Matthew. You can look it up. It's called the Matthew principle. It's like I'm pretty sure it goes like this: from he who has everything, more shall be given. From he who has nothing, even what he has shall be taken from him. So let's see. what
How
it
do you
says.
just know that?
I've studied a lot of this stuff.
For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away.
So can I tell you why this relates to everything we're talking about?
Yeah.
And then,
What?
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
It's just like it's two different things
Right.
that are linked together.
Right.
Two
So
verses.
whether you look at a capitalist system, a a communist system, feudalism, monarchy. Throughout human history, we have this reoccurring problem of societies at a certain point. What ends up happening to societies is that a lot of power starts to get concentrated at the top. And like you look at America right now, like we have like the middle class, kind of disappearing and everything, right? And you have more and more people like kind of becoming more working class poor, where they don't have a middle class. But inevitably, that's what happens in like pretty much every society, right? Like in monarchies, you have kings and like nobles that start to gain most of the power, and they start to take more and more and more. Same thing happens in capitalism. And a lot of things that people advocate for communism don't realize is the same thing happens in communist governments. You look at people when you start to merge state and business, right? Like businesses, like different kind of businesses and the state. What you end up having is that a few people control most of the wealth, most of the power, and those are the higher ups in the party. The same thing happens. So that's my problem with communism, is that it's not addressing this fundamental human issue where in any kind of government that we have, we get people that are at the top that siphon off most of the power and siphon off most of the resources, and then most of the people at the bottom get little to nothing. But that's what the Matthew Principle is talking about. So that's my fundamental problem.
The richer get richer and the poorer get poorer.
So how does not saying that capitalism is bad, just a question, but how does capitalism like combat that?
Well, I wouldn't say like this is where I come from. Is that I don't think it's capitalism's job to combat that. I think it's human beings as we'll say vehicles of understanding. That sounds like so stupid. I know. I'm getting deep into the philosophical end of it. I know that sounded super pretentious. Anyway, but what I'm saying is I think we need a cultural change, because the problem is you can implement a new style of government, a new style of like economics and everything, but it's this fundamental human problem that we have, that we keep doing the same thing over and over again, no matter if it's communism, capitalism, monarchies, or whatever. So I don't think capitalism has to do anything. I think human beings have to understand themselves better. Like human beings have to understand what motivates us. That's why I studied psychology, right? It's like we have to understand what motivates us. We have to understand the way that we fundamentally are. And then you can create systems around that, right? So I think it's not capitalism's jobs. It's our jobs to understand ourselves better and to create a culture that prevents that from happening. Because culturally, I think is where we're going to keep from letting these things start to drift off. If that makes sense.
I feel like we should all be working together for the betterment of society.
Right.
Universalism.
Right. But that's the idea that communism sells, but it's not what it does.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It sells the idea of we should all be doing this and everything. But that's what I'm saying. We have to have a cultural understanding. We have to understand this as human beings, that we all need to help each other out before we go implementing any kind of government that relates to that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I'm thinking about with this is the reason why they say, I mean, this is a parable of Jesus. So this is something that Jesus said. And I think what can be taken away is that, like, if you take that principle, I think Jesus realizes and is telling us that it will always exist, no matter if we use capitalism, corporatism, whatever, or even with a cultural shift. I think it's just the nature of human beings to either want more power, and then some different way of grasping that power will always exist. Like whether it be in capitalism, whether it be in the monarchy, whatever, there will always be an avenue for powerful people to get more powerful. And because of that, the inverse is also true. There will always be ways of poor people to get even more poor, whether it's out of them trying, because I know a lot of I read a book called The Psychology of Money. And in the very first chapter of it, money is capitalism, right? But in the very first chapter of it, it's he tells a story where people who say that they don't have $400 worth every month of liquidity like even $400. They don't have it. But you can see those same people buy $400 worth of lottery tickets, like every month.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like there's always going to be a way to where like it's almost like, especially like in capitalistic society, like specifically, I don't know, maybe it seems like it's they know how to get money better, and so that's why they get more money, whereas like maybe poor people don't have that knowledge of how to get more money, thus the reason why they're poor, but
Difference
also
in
thus the
education.
reason why they get poorer.
Yeah, I feel like it's one, like almost not 100%, but it's definitely a difference of education.
Definitely.
Even going about school, the mandatory high school, elementary school, middle school, high school, you don't learn about finance.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't learn about
Or
finance.
statistics.
Or statistics.
Yeah.
You don't learn about, you're kind of just thrown into being an adult without any type of adult training.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I feel like when you grow up kind of in a different economic stature, you learn about it.
Right.
You quickly do learn about it. You learn through your parents, you learn through your environment, you learn through going to college, you learn,
Mm-hmm.
you're just more kind of faced with having to learn about it. You learn about different options to spend your money, different options to save and invest your money.
Yeah.
And if you don't have access to that education, it's just not going to be there.
Or it's like a status game.
Yeah.
Like where it's like if you do have money, you spend it on, rather than spending it on things that would actually get you more money,
Yeah.
you spend it on things that get you more status, perceived status.
Yeah. Or even the lottery tickets, it's like, oh, that 0.0010% chance.
You have
or-
a higher likelihood of like doing so many other things right than actually winning the lottery.
Yeah.
So it's just like that dynamic where it's like we're all humans, so we like try to fit in our social structures, but at the same time, those things like capitalism is just a way to create that more fluidly, I think, in my opinion. But it substitutes that like fluidity like with money. Like that's how you breach classes is with more money. That's the only difference with capitalism. In monarchies, it could be like the way to breach it is if you claim that you are the king that is sent by God,
The new king.
right? Like, or you take it over. Like you literally
Could that actually happen though?
what?
I mean, someone in like say England being like, I'm actually the new king now.
I think if you were very persuasive, I don't know. I have no idea what could happen.
They would have
or,
to challenge it.
or
with a sword.
incredibly powerful. Like if there was an incredibly powerful person that just decided in England, okay, I'm just going to rule now.
Yeah, you have to have the people behind you.
Or sword fight to the death.
Yeah,
Prince
I challenge
Harry.
to duel.
Yeah, Prince Harry and
Yeah.
some like random like Cockney.
Who's the
British
king
dude.
now? Who's the king now?
Charles?
Someone
Charles.
got coordinated, right?
Charles, yeah, he's the king.
Oh,
King
okay.
Charles.
Is that the? Which one is that one? Oh no, that's not Harry.
No.
Right.
No, that's
Yeah.
not
Harry
no,
is
he's an
white.
old. You know, King
Harry-
Charles is an old guy.
Yeah,
Oh,
Harry is
okay,
like the
okay.
second in line.
Is it Harry and Henry? Is that the names?
I don't know. I think I just know Harry.
You're like, I'm not even looking this up.
This is
We're not
irrelevant,
going-
totally
we're not
off
going down
topic,
this
so sorry.
rabbit hole, yeah.
But I do think that it's like a weird, like culturally, I think you're right. But it's just, I don't know if there's going to be a way where we can segment the social structures that we create in a way that is universally equal towards everybody.
Well,
Because that is not like.
I don't
gonna
think
be
that's
a-
No, well, it's
Yeah.
well. I'm not even saying we should do that. What I'm saying is we should understand our nature. Like I don't think everybody has like an adequate understanding of our nature.
Nature,
Like human nature. Like so,
like the fact that this will always exist, kind of human
Well,
nature.
yeah, to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, and it's like, and that's my issue. That's why I criticize the whole communism thing, is because I don't think you fundamentally understand how people work, and you're trying to force people to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And in the back of their heads, they're like, okay, well, we believe violence is necessary and everything, and a lot of them overtly say that too, right?
Yeah.
It's not something they hide, but it's just like, okay. You shoot a bunch of people, you like imprison a bunch of people and everything, and then you get your utopia.
I think it's giving like dystopia, like Hunger Games, like
That's what I'm
Divergent.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that's just all I'm really thinking about right
But that's what I'm
now.
saying. It's not a well thought out plan at all. It's like you're wanting to solve the problem of misery and suffering, and you're replacing it with a bunch of more misery and suffering.
Yeah.
It's like, what does that solve? The only thing it solves is that it gets you out of the bottom of the hierarchy and it gets you to the top of it. Like, so that's, but it's like, it's just that roadblock in their mind that they don't want to accept that that's the reason. They're telling themselves this whole narrative about why they want it versus why they actually want
Yeah.
What percent of protesters do you think have that mentality?
You know,
I would say it's disproportionately affected young people, and then therefore most young people protest. So I would say maybe like 80%, maybe like closer to like 60. But
what do you think?
80%.
I think,
I don't know.
I
I
think-
feel like, I mean, this is the first I'm hearing about this.
Yeah.
So automatically I'm thinking like next to zero. Or maybe like
I'm-
1, 2,
I'm-
3, 10.
I
I'm
do
telling
think-
you, there is a large contingent of people that are communist in their thinking.
I do think that
I mean, maybe not to the extremes of communism,
Right.
if that makes sense.
well
In a way, like I feel like there's definitely a
There-
limit.
there is
That
a
makes sense.
like communism is definitely I think like an extreme point of view where it's like you rationalize it. I think the like philosophical more like I don't want to like there is a term for it which is postmodernism, which kind of boils down capitalism into what it like kind of is, which is just like a power dynamic. Like that's what postmodernism suggests is that like there's always right like it's going to be a power struggle, and that is kind of what our society is built on now. It's just like these different types of power dynamics, and the way to solve it is through giving these people more power or whatever. But it's like the fundamental principle is power, right? Like if I like you know what I'm
And
talking
that makes
about?
sense. It makes sense.
Well, it's the whole framing of like communism is oppressor versus oppressed, right? So
Yeah.
that's the lens at which people look at everything. So like any interaction that you have with anybody, it's oppressor versus oppressed. What do you think? You have a look on your face like yeah.
I mean, I hear what you guys are saying.
Uh-huh.
I just think that it's I feel like the view is just so extreme, and I don't think that's like the reality.
Well, I think some people like especially with us being younger, I think it's just like a majority of people don't even fully realize what communism means. It's just like an easy thing to grasp onto, and therefore.
Because I feel like these people aren't like being like, yay, communism, yay. But I feel like it's almost like they have this idea and people are like, that sounds like communism, so you must be pro-communism, if that makes
Well,
sense.
the problem is,
I don't think
you're
there's
right.
like a good distinguish. Yeah, exactly. I think you're right.
Yeah, you're right. It's like to me,
There's not a good distinguished. Like people like don't distinguish what they think as communism. They just think it, not realizing
But
that it's
not
communism.
to the extremes of communism. I feel like when I think of communism, I'm thinking like extreme communism. But I feel like on the level that people might be like gracing the subject is just very much like dialed down.
well, can I tell you like what I'm trying to get at is that I think the majority of the people that go to protests aren't like yay communism in their thinking, right? Like I think they're just like they want like legitimate oppression to stop. They want legitimate
Yeah.
like
And I don't think that's a bad
injustice,
thing.
and that's not a bad
It's
thing.
not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, but what happens is that you have legitimately people who are I'll just say this hateful, like people that like hate the way that life is going, hate the way that the world is going and everything, that have these like communist ideologies and everything, and a lot of them they try to steer where the protest is going. Like they try to hijack social movements. This is the whole thing we were talking about, like social movements getting co-opted,
Mhm.
right? And they try to take these social movements, these points of legitimate anger, like in human history, and they try to steer it in a way that benefits them.
Mm.
That's what I don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, not complaining about injustice because I think they have every right to complain about injustice.
Yeah, it's like we want to solve this injustice, so put us in power so we can solve that
Yeah,
injustice.
hell yeah, dude.
I think that's what
Yeah.
it kind
Yeah,
of is.
I just don't hear that as much, I guess. I mean, I know that you guys are saying 80%, like,
I didn't
that's
say. I didn't say.
crazy.
I don't-
That's
so-
crazy.
I will say like
I did not say
I'm thinking 1%.
I don't know
Maybe
if
2.
like you go to people. I think that a majority of people will say that though. It's like, how do you solve this injustice? Well, if you put these people in power, they will have a better chance of solving that injustice. And it's
I think it's a different perspective than that. I
What do
think
you-
it's more of like, okay, when we look at the people in power right now,
Mhm.
right? At least for me, from my Black perspective, everyone's white. right?
Mhm.
How are they going to understand and help solve the problems that minorities are facing if none of them are Black and understand the issues at all?
True.
So I feel like in places of power, there needs to be people with multiple perspectives. There needs to be pluralism just to have that diversity of knowledge, just so they can actually make a change. Because
Right.
if everyone that we're looking up to looks in like different from you and people are always putting them on this high pedestal, I mean, it's very hard to even create change. You know what I mean? And that's just how I look at it.
Right. Can I get to this point? I think this is like where we have hardship in this country is because it's like we need more Black perspectives, right, and everything.
Minority perspectives.
Well, yeah, and
general.
minority perspectives, but a key word here is minority, right?
Yeah.
And that actually is an important part of why we don't get that perspective
Yeah.
because it just so happens to be that white people happen to be the majority in this country. So,
But even with that same
Right.
statistic, it doesn't add up that what's the percentage of white people? Like 70?
so just
60?
white is like 75%,
Okay.
and then
Of
non. So let me finish. 75%, but and
Yeah, we're talking America, right?
we're talking America.
Okay.
Let me finish. So, 75%, but I think it's something like if you take out the Hispanic population, because Hispanic people are also there's a large contingent of them that are also considered white. That's why you have the race category that you fill out, and then the Hispanic or non-Hispanic category. When you take out the Hispanic, we can look it up too. The Hispanic category.
I just feel like our positions of power should reflect that. See, we're talking, there's 70% of white people.
Yeah.
Yet why is it that there's 99% of people in power white? That's not not true.
Well, it's not.
But
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's definitely
that's not true.
99%.
But it just doesn't reflect the 70%.
When we talk about
That's
wealth, I would say wealth is different than like representation in government. I think
Yeah.
representation in government is a lot closer to the actual like makeup of America.
Uh-huh.
Now, when we talk about wealth, that's something, and of course, wealth is very influential.
Representation. Wait, say that again.
Representation, like in the United States government, what percentage of people? I don't know what it is, and I'd like to
I
see.
don't
I
think it's
feel
even
like it's-
distributed.
It's absolutely it's
Well,
it's
then,
bad.
I would say on a
It's
local
bad.
level. On the local
Well,
level,
let's
I think
see.
it is.
I can agree with that.
2022.
Yeah.
So what is this?
To an extent.
How is?
Yeah.
Oh, so
Kinda.
this is how the
This is just the U.S. as a whole.
So white non-Hispanic in America is 58.9% by 2020. So like when you think of white people like stand like without like any Hispanic heritage, then you're looking at about roughly 60%. So if you're
Okay.
saying
I just feel like it should reflect that. That's it.
what should reflect that?
I guess
Like Congress.
people
House.
who make change, people who make decisions.
Mhm.
It should the diverse perspectives we have. I mean, we don't have diversity,
Yeah.
but there is some diversity here.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I feel like the people making laws, people making influential decisions, people who are in power should have that same diversity,
Can
that
we
same
look up,
scatter
like,
of
the-
knowledge.
Current Congress, like what percentage of them, like ethnic makeup of like the current Congress? Because that would be something that's interesting. I want to see how representative it actually is. Because we're rolling off in the number right now. 58.9% of America is white without any Hispanic in
Yeah.
there. So let's.
But we should go ahead and include the white with Hispanic.
So
I feel like.
this is what it
That's
looks
fine.
like. Republicans are. I mean, that's kind of obvious, I guess.
So yeah, Democrats
Holy
are.
cow!
Yeah.
But in the Senate, it's
What are the numbers though? I don't feel like counting all these dots.
well. That is
I know, but like let's get the actual number because we got to look at the whole Senate. We got to look at the whole Senate, the whole House, the whole Senate.
I mean,
Oh, I don't know this.
Like I want to see
related
like
information. Like, why doesn't it? Yeah, why doesn't it give us that?
because also
That's
you
the
got to
chart.
remember 70% is a big number too. So like we're looking. Of course, Republicans. Yeah, it's way more white.
Why?
Yeah.
No.
Why is that?
Well, well, if you look at
Well,
if you look at what they're selling, it's,
is that even a question?
Maybe rhetorical. Is this? Yeah, I guess
okay. So these are the numbers.
it looks like it.
So 23, we have,
We can pause it.
and this is
Oh, wait, seriously?
Yeah, we can pause it.
well, we can.
Oh yeah, after this point.
We can just we can go off. So, so 118th. No, go up, go up. So 118th, this is number of non-white U.S. House and Senate members by race. So you have 60 black, and that's both House and Senate. 60 black, 54 Hispanic.
I think it's percentages.
No, it's not. It's number. It's number of people.
For sure.
But there's no way. There's not only 40.
It's saying
people.
non-white. It's saying non-white. This is the number of non-white U.S. So this is
Oh, I
included.
see.
So
What
white people
are
aren't
all
included in
these?
this at all.
Oh, these the years? What is
Yeah,
18?
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
117.
2000.
It's because they the way they say this is the 117th Congress. It's the
Okay.
118 every time they have like new, like elections and everything, or cycles, I guess.
So-
White's not in here.
Yeah,
That's what
so
I'm
this
saying.
This is the only ethnic groups that are non-white that are represented in Congress.
This is kind of a bad chart because
Yeah,
all
it's
it's saying
Yeah,
is
I don't know what I'm looking
Yeah,
I feel like
it's a
that
bad
doesn't
chart.
say anything.
where is just like this is
There we
the
go.
number.
Oh,
Okay, this is the number we
there it
need.
is.
Yeah.
So 313. It's out of 434 members. So divide that.
Yeah, I'll do quick math.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So we're saying,
13.
for the
Oops.
clarity of anybody watching this, we are saying
Right.
there are 313 white as of this latest Congress.
That's 72%.
That's 72%. So if
Yeah.
we're
In
going,
the House.
Yeah,
okay, so that doesn't have Hispanic.
and then let me look at the. Oh
Well, it's 88%.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at. Okay, so we're talking about black representation. Let's just look. I'm not-
I was talking about
right.
just different perspectives because
Right.
I'm all about like I guess pluralism. So it's
Right.
not just the black perspective; it's all of the perspectives. Every single different cultures, people all have different walks of life, different experiences, and I feel like that contributes greatly to our society.
So do you think there should be like a set amount of this specific
I don't know.
like do you think it
I
should
don't-
equal like the percentage in the House should be equal to the
I don't
overall
think-
percentage of the country?
I mean, I'm not sure about like the solutions and
Right,
whatnot,
right.
but I think that just looking at this, it's
Mhm.
just telling,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But like not in a way of like, oh, we should change it doing 1, 2, 3, but
We
like
shouldn't set quotas.
it's just it. I mean, yeah, but like it's just telling, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like our society would just benefit a lot with just diversity, even age diversity.
Yes,
Age diversity,
diversity.
it's
That's a big one.
huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
That's
'Cause
a big
it's not just race. It's
Yeah.
people have so many different experiences, different
Yeah.
walks of life, different life things, and it contributes greatly in a larger, bigger perspective.
I'm pretty sure Joe, like as an example, like Joe Biden got put first into Congress before the internet even came out. So I don't know how he's supposed to.
He
like,
doesn't know what the
be-
internet is.
Yeah, he's supposed to be able to represent like the generation who lives on the internet.
Yeah.
You know.
The
And the
age
people-
thing might be the biggest thing.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
that's
Because
yeah,
honestly,
one
the
of the
people
biggest
that are making these decisions, especially on decisions that have to do with like cyberspace, TikTok, they're asking questions that are like, have you opened your phone? Have you opened your phone?
Yeah,
Over here talking about
yes.
we're gonna ban it because why are they tracking your eyes?
You
What are
really
you saying?
they are making laws and they don't even know
They
how to
don't know what it is.
They don't know how to work a laptop.
Exactly.
and
And
they're
it's just
making-
not making sense.
Yeah, like it is like
Like, Look at
That's
this.
insane.
What?
yeah.
What?
So we have
30% of the Senate
is 70 to
Is
79.
Yeah.
and
That's
then another
not
That's
30
wild.
That's not
Do
30%
these people,
of
did they
people.
have internet growing up?
No.
Exactly.
No.
And then
Are these the
another
boomers?
30%
Are these the baby
is
boomers?
70 to
What's that?
79. That is
no, these are baby.
that's baby boomer.
Yeah.
That's baby boomer.
Where's Gen X?
Gen X is when you start to get like the 50s,
56.
60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
and then
that's
millennials
more
are
Gen X.
35 down. and then
Yeah.
the
Well,
next-
some millennials are starting to get about like 40.
Yeah.
Like in their early
Wow.
40s. Yeah. Some
So-
millennials.
man, that's wild.
Yeah. And I feel like it's just all in all demographics. There just needs to be
Something we can 100% agree on is that, yeah, there needs to be more age-related representation. Because if anything, I think that is very telling to why there's not appropriate representation.
Mhm.
Because it's a whole generation that does not understand a younger or just even technology, the way the world works. They're
But
getting more
even
disconnected.
with technology, I feel like they say the people that are 80 years old grew up with segregation, grew up with the mentality,
Right.
a different mentality
Yeah.
that's just not how it should be
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And even though they're growing up in this new society, all of that is still there.
Yeah.
Not saying that every single person's racist or whatever, but their upbringing was completely different from how our upbringing is now.
Yeah.
And it's impactful.
Yeah.
No, you're.
I mean, a very good example of why age diversity matters too is that like Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, like the founding document of this country, when he was 35. So, like, what is the representation of people who are 30 to 39 in the House and Senate? That's like
Might as well be
2%?
0. Might as well be
8% maybe. Like,
Well, I will say,
compared to everybody else.
I will say this because the 20 to 29, it might be like one person. It says. I will say this: I don't think people our age should be in the Senate or the House.
Is there not? There's not an age limit for the Senate and House,
There,
or not age limit, like age requirement.
I think it's like 25.
for the House and Senate.
Whatever the age limit is.
For the president, it's like 40.
You definitely have to have your cortex developed before you're going to be representing people. I think. Yeah, I actually did want to get to this because we're running low on time. The whole because we were talking about the protest thing earlier, right? It's like the whole like freedom of speech aspect of it is something that I really wanted to touch on because like did you see like there's like a new bill trying to be passed in Congress about like it's something, and I don't know if we can look this up, it's something about not being able to criticize Israel. Like yes, I'm not joking. So like criticism of Israel has been I think it's being like labeled as like hateful speech. Like it's being I think would you mind looking that up? Because
I
look
find
up
it super
criticism of Israel ban.
That's my comment on that.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, criticism of Israel. Yeah, so from my understanding of it, it's like they're trying to make it into like something as
defines criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism.
House passes bill that defines criticism of Israel
It
as
passed?
anti-Semitism.
The House passed it?
Yes, the House passed it.
I mean, this is a weird. Like,
that makes sense because all of the protests for pro-Palestine have been labeled as anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
By like the news.
Yes, it's automatically labeled as anti-Semitic.
Which is kind of weird.
Wow.
Kind of odd because pro-Palestine doesn't inherently mean anti.
That passed with 320 members of the House.
That's insane.
So that's also a large proportion of Democrats too.
Yeah.
That's
So I bet like a majority of. Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, the House.
I feel like this isn't even politically divided.
Well, I don't think it's going to get past the Senate. There's no way.